not meet their hiring requirements. They failed 200 short of where they are, and they're being overstretched. With that, let me bring up our ranking member, John Katko.
Thank you, Leader McCarthy. I appreciate it. This briefing we had today is just confirming the nightmare that we already know is coming and that's already here. Anytime in this country you hear of a drug overdose death, whether it be in Topeka, Kansas, or Syracuse, New York, my hometown, you have to understand that every single community is a border community in this country, and every single state's a border state, because the poison that's coming across our borders, that's much more easy to do because of the influx of immigrants, illegal aliens coming across, is making it impossible to stop, and it's killing our kids all over the country. Some of the quick stats for you. Right now, they're seeing about 8,000 members, or 8,000 aliens a day coming across. 8,000. Operational control is about 5,000. They expect once Title 42 is rescinded, it'll go up to as much as 18,000 a day. There's no way that we can control the border in any way, shape, or form if that happens. Now, I want you to do some math here, because all my colleagues will talk about some of the other things, but do this simple math. You cannot cross the border unless you pay the cartels a minimum of $4,000. So if you have 8,000 a day coming across times $4,000, that's $32 million a day, which is $1 billion a month going to cartels. So what are they doing with this money? They're investing in being able to make fentanyl themselves and not having to import it from China. They're investing in cyber criminal activity. They're creating basically nation states within Mexico that are criminal organizations that are further going to destabilize Mexico. And for the first time in our nation's history, we have a very good chance, because of what's going on with this president's policies, of having a destabilized nation on our border. So it's far more than just the aliens coming across. It's far more than just the drugs coming across. This is a national security issue that's going to further get worse as this time goes on this summer. It's going to get much worse when they rescind Title 42, and it's a damn shame because our country can't handle it. And next, I want you to hear from Yvette Harrell. Harold, excuse me.
That's fine. Well, you know what the word of the day is? Hypocrisy. And guess what? That's been the word for over a year now, because this administration fails to hold into place the policies that actually worked to help keep our nation safe. And to think that we're allowing this administration to put the health, welfare, and safety of the American people at risk. But here's what's crazy. I have people in my district, kids that are still wearing a mask to school, elementary school. Military personnel who are losing their careers in the military because of mask mandates or vaccine mandates. I have problems in the district that are related to this COVID-19 that we're all dealing with, and yet we turn a blind eye and we let whoever wants to come in our country come in with not so much as a test. This is the hypocrisy I'm talking about. It is running rampant. We invited the vice president down to our district, the border czar. She didn't come. Why? Because she doesn't care. We have met with more ambassadors in our office, and probably everyone on this stage, than she has, because we understand the importance. We understand the value of the American people, and what we're doing right now is unsafe, it's not smart, and there is no reason for it, because we know we can keep this border safe. Now we've put more pressure on the Border Patrol and the communities in and around the border to where, like Leader McCarthy just said, every community is a border community. Americans deserve better than this. We can do better than this. We have to keep Title 42 in play. We have to protect the American people. And let's get away from using the word hypocrisy. We're tired of it. Americans are tired of it, and they should be. We can do better. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Congressman Chip Roy.
Thanks, Yvette. I want to thank Leader McCarthy for holding this press conference on such an important issue. John, for your leadership on border security issues. Yvette introduced legislation about 14 months ago to make Title 42 be required to be enforced. We filed a discharge petition a year ago. Now we're up to, I think, around 210 signatures. Virtually every Republican has signed that discharge petition to force a vote on the floor of the House to require Title 42 to be used, but not one of our Democratic colleagues has joined to sign that discharge petition. You might want to ask why. That's one of the things I don't want to ask our friends in the media to ask our Democratic colleagues why. Ask them if it's okay that 500,000 people came into the United States last year that were known gotaways, or that 700,000 people were released into the United States last year. Ask them if that's okay. Ask them if it's okay that right now in Texas on Interstate 10 or I-35, which runs up along the district I represent, or 281, which comes up out of San Antonio, or I-10 heading into Houston, ask them if it's okay that there's a little girl right now that's going to be taken and put in a stash house in Houston, Texas, because the cartels are moving her for profit to put her into the sex trafficking trade. Ask them if they're okay with that. Because I can tell you in Bernie, Texas, a suburb of San Antonio, we had 9 people in a car last year caught by local law enforcement. The person driving the car was an American citizen employee of the Cartel del Noreste of Los Zetas and was moving those people, 8 people in that car, to his stash house in Houston to put them into the sex and labor trafficking trade. One of the boys had paid $4,000 to go pick grapes in California. We get dozens of these stories every single day. We asked Brandon Judd, we asked our friends at the Border Patrol Unit, is this an invasion? And he didn't even hesitate to say it's an invasion. The amount of violence right now going on in warring cartels, where they're making the level of money that John referenced, the hundreds of millions of dollars, they're moving human beings for profit, fentanyl into our communities, people dying in suburbs all across America, taking Xanax laced with fentanyl. In Austin, Texas, University of Texas football, right? Sam Ellinger, Jake Ellinger. Jake Ellinger died taking Xanax laced with fentanyl. This is happening in our communities across the 100,000 people across the country last year died from from fentanyl and opioid overdoses. In the 80s, we were upset about 10,000 dying from cocaine overdoses. Think about that. That's the result of these open borders. Ask Democrats if they're okay with all of that. That's the question I hope you'll ask them, and I'll turn it over to my friend Tony Gonzalez from Texas.
And I'd ask, can we afford for this border crisis to continue? Can we afford for Democrats to continue to turn a blind eye? This should be bipartisan. Everybody should want a stable, secure border. It shouldn't take Leader McCarthy traveling down there last year to bring issue to it, or traveling down again here soon to bring issue to it. You know, this year alone, there's been over 7,000 special interest aliens that have been apprehended on the southern border. That's an issue. Terrorism doesn't have a face. When terrorists try to kill Americans, they don't care who you voted for. They don't care the color of your skin. They don't care how much money you have in your pocket, who you go to bed with, who you pray to. None of that matters. We should be coming together. The House Intelligence Committee should be focused on securing our southern border. The other piece of this is there's a human piece to this. You know, we had one of the agents mention that there was just a suicide. So in the Border Patrol, we had a Border Patrol agent that just committed suicide a few days ago. There was a human piece to this that is missing. Last week, there was a 32-year-old woman from Guatemala that fell off the wall crossing in Tornillo, Texas, and she was unresponsive. She later died at the hospital. Oh, by the way, she was pregnant. 2 weeks ago, there was a four-year-old little girl that drowned, that was swept away in the river in Del Rio. Title 42 goes away, and these numbers double overnight. There should be nothing partisan about these deaths, whether they're Border Patrol agents, whether they're undocumented, whether they're migrants, doesn't matter. This is something that we should all come together, and it starts here, and I would argue the Republican Party has a plan to do that on day one when we take the majority of the House. With that, I'll turn it over to Debbie Lesko.
Thank you. I'm from the border state of Arizona. Border security is the #1 polling issue in Arizona. You can see it in the U.S. Senate campaign commercials. You can see it in the Arizona governor campaign commercials. And I tell you what, Biden just hurt Mark Kelly's reelection campaign by saying that he is going to undo Title 42. Biden and the Democrats have done everything they can to support totally open borders. Just think about it. On day one, he stopped funding the border wall. Border wall pieces are sitting there right next to the fence. Then he took away all of the Trump policies, including Remain in Mexico. And even though the court has ordered him to reinstate Remain in Mexico, I've been told by Border Patrol and by officials on the border that they're hardly doing it at all. So he's again ignoring the law. Now the one last remaining tool that the Biden administration had to have some kind of semblance of border security, he's now taking away. And so when the White House and Mayorkas say, oh, we have a plan, I know what their plan is. Open the border totally to anybody and everybody from any country all over the world, terrorists, rapists, criminals. This is the Democrat and Biden plan, totally open borders. I asked the Border Patrol officers in this meeting, what do they see with these girls and women being raped? And he said the Biden administration and Democrat policies are inviting the cartels to abuse and use vulnerable women and children that are then sold into sex slavery, and they're here for how many years being sex slaves. And our presidential policies are supporting this. This is outrageous, and it must end. And with that, I want to introduce Representative August Pfluger.
What you're hearing today is a story of abandonment. It's a story of abdication of responsibility. It's a story of appeasing cartels and failed foreign policies. And I think many have noted that our president has not made a single correct decision on foreign policy in the 47, 48 years that he's been in office, and that's true when it comes to this crisis. You know, Secretary Mayorkas testified in front of the House last year, and he said that the border was secure. Yesterday, we had 8,000 people illegally cross the southern border. And what we heard from Brandon Judd and other Border Patrol agents today was that there are times in that 240-plus mile stretch that's completely unguarded because we have Border Patrol agents who are literally now being made into administrative officers. And there are times where we have no idea how many people and who is crossing our border. Why won't Secretary Mayorkas admit that our border is not secure? And I'd like to call on everybody here, especially in the media, to ask that question. When Secretary Mayorkas comes to this House tomorrow and meets with people, I'd like you to ask him if the border is secure. I'd like you to ask Secretary Mayorkas if he believes that it's secure. And if it's not, what is his plan? Because with the rescission of Title 42, the estimates are not 8,000 people a day, but 18,000 people a day. That is the impact, and that's the story of abandonment. That's the story of an abdication of the responsibility to keep our country secure, one which this administration has not done.
Let's go. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Two quick sort of logistical questions. Number one, are you planning on holding any votes on resolutions or trying to force any procedural votes related to?
Yeah, as you listen to Chip Roy, it's based upon Yvette Harold's bill. We have a discharge petition with more than 210 signatures from Republican members. We hear Democrats talk in the press asking the president not to remove Title 42. This is their opportunity to bring it to the floor. So it really ends with them.
The second question was, I thought I heard Congressman Cartel reference another border trip. Is the House Republican Conference planning another border trip?
Yeah, I have a trip. We have never stopped going to the border. One of our first trips were just in last year around March is when we discovered we took a large group down. We discovered catching now people on the terrorist watch list, but they have been continuing. I would say almost 2/3 or almost every single member of our conference has been.
And next week, we're having the fourth to San Diego that I've been involved in.
Yeah.
On the 19th with
Every group has been sending people down. I'm going to have another trip that I take down and bring members later this month, but yes. You should go with us sometime. Yes, sir.
Do you think Secretary Becerra last week in his testimony was fully honest when he said that Title 42 will remain in place so long as the folks at the CDC and others give us the facts and the science to show that in order to protect public health, they can and will use Title 42 to protect Americans, and the next day, the announcement comes?
No, I don't. And if you raise that question, the Speaker just extended proxy voting here in the House based upon COVID. I just flew with a mask on based upon the extension that they believed within COVID. Remember, Title 42 goes beyond just COVID itself. So there's a number of reasons why they should maintain it. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think it's advantage for Republicans that Democrats are holding a hearing now on this matter? Do you think that this gives you guys a way to say that?
I think this is too serious of an issue to play a political advantage. It's one side or the other. It goes down to the foundation of your nation. It goes down to the security of your nation. It goes down to the human trafficking. It goes down to fentanyl. There's so many elements to here. And you listen to a president who said that he wants to secure a border. So much that he put his vice president in charge, who's only been to it one time. To a president who's been in office more than 42 years, and the closest I've ever found that he came was in a car driving by El Paso. In a concern that numerous times from both sides of the aisle has asked this president to engage about the concerns on the border. Just his language, in our very first time down to the border last year, there was a line of individuals there, and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, when we were talking to them, we asked them why did they come and how many days did it take them. They had been walking for more than 18 days. They said, because Joe Biden invited us. That's what they believed based upon his language. This was right after the inaugural. He can start by saying, don't come. He can start by using every avenue to secure the border. But on his very first day, he stopped the securing of the border with stopping the building of the wall. The only reason you still have Remain in Mexico is because a court told them to do it, but they're not upholding it. Remember to the American public what Title 42 is. If you catch somebody coming across the border illegally, you can send them back to their country. Not everyone gets that, only 55%. You're not testing an individual for COVID, but you're sending them somewhere into America. It's a catch and release. How many people do you think are going to be at that border next month? How many people have already started coming to the border knowing what May 23rd day is? And don't believe it's just Central America. They come from 160 other countries. We've had people from Russia, Uzbekistan, you name it, they're there. That's the concern. And who's making the money on it? The cartels who are becoming stronger. I remember having a meeting with Tony and some of his mayors talking about the number of days the schools had to be closed because of the shootouts coming across the border. It's like more than 40. Can you imagine kids going to school, but the schools being shut down because of another car chase from the cartels? Becoming more powerful. Have you watched some of the footage of what goes on just on the other side of the border? Looks like it comes from Ukraine. The burning of the cars. That's directly across from this nation. Yes, last question, we got votes.
You all always talk about every state as a border state and how the issues connect, but do you feel like that the voters and constituents are connecting those?
I think they are now when they sit back and look at every day a new person dies from fentanyl that had no idea where it came from, that didn't buy a drug that for fentanyl, but purchased something else, had no idea what's coming. I was home the other week and I picked up my local paper, the Bakersfield Californian, and there was a mother who was inviting the community to her son's funeral because he had just died of fentanyl, to warn them. Yeah, it happens in every single state, in every single city, in every single community. It doesn't matter how wealthy, it doesn't matter how good a family you are, it could touch them all. You just saw 3 weeks ago in Florida, 6 kids ODing. They're the very best kids. They came from one of our academies. 2 of them who OD'd didn't take the drug. They simply did what they thought was right to give somebody mouth to mouth because they went into cardiac arrest, and they did as well. That is how powerful fentanyl is in coming across with no knowledge that that's what was in it. So yes, every single city, nobody is safe because this administration is not securing our border. Thank you for coming. It's very important.